All right, so the paint's all dry. It's cured. It's hard. It turned out okay for what it is. So it's still a worn out, old, beat up truck, but now it's a worn out, beat up truck with a shiny frame. So what we're going to do today is we're going to focus on getting this axle assembled, put the brake chambers and S-cams back on, get everything we can get on it the way it sits right now, and then we're going to lift it and set it underneath the truck and set it on jack stands. Get the truck back down lower so it's a little easier to work with. I got my seals, believe it or not. I got these at my Freightliner dealer, mostly because we have, a fantastic salesman from Freightliner. Ray is a great guy, treats us well. He set our account up over there, and we get a little discount over there, and we appreciate it. I got those seals for $20 less at the Freightliner dealer than I could at Napa or any other place online. Ray watches our videos. Ray stops by every now and again, checks on what we're doing, see how we are, and we appreciate him. We like to go to Freightliner when we can, and we also go to our international dealer. We get our stuff from Alan down there because he's a great guy too. They treat us fantastic. Let's get moving on assembling this. Put anti-seize on the pin, but I also put it in forked holes as well. That way we get good coverage, on the pin and my fingers. And I do the slack adjuster as well. That way we got it everywhere. Hopefully the next guy won't have as much trouble driving these out as I did. Now, a lot of times I would replace them, but those brake chambers in good shape. There's no rust issues with them, so we're going to let them roll on those as well, on the studs. Because somebody changed this alongside the road in the freezing cold or the blazing hot summer when it goes bad. We'll appreciate that. Let's just hope it ain't me. So I'll bolt this on in place, and it's just a matter of reassembly. And then we'll get on to the brakes. I think we're going to wait and do the brakes once we get the axle underneath the truck. I drive in pins in this way, so if you have to use a hammer, you can swing on it this way, because otherwise there's not a lot of room in here. See what I'm needle scaling here? All this crud that's down in here. Look at the one I just finished. How much easier it'll be to get them U-bolts in there. You leave that crud in there, it just cakes up around your U-bolt and starts to rust. I want that stuff to fall out of there. That'll do. Alright, I'll get this last one. I got those cleaned up. We got them all primed up. That's the bottom where the U-bolts go through, and there's the top for the centering pin, which should go here on the axle. Yeah, my wife makes homemade baked goodies all the time. She makes it so hard for a fat guy to resist this stuff. I mean, look at the size of that cookie, man. And all of them, I don't know how many chocolate chips she used. That one's actually lighter than most. The rest of them, man, they're so full of chocolate chips. Whew, it's hard to resist. My buddy Mike, Dirt Boss, Masonry and Excavating, he understands. I tell my wife all the time, if you don't make that stuff, I won't eat it. Mike says the same thing. But our wives say they just like to take care of us. So they make us this stuff because they know it'll put a smile on her face. And it does. I saw them cookies and I smelled them baking. And I walked in the house and I'm like, oh, yes. Fat guy's happy day. And here we are. So if you don't know who Mike is at Dirt Boss Masonry and Excavation, check him out. I'll leave a link in the description for you guys. Great guy, fantastic family. Does just what his title says, masonry and excavating. He's got some trucks and trailers and equipment, and he does foundations and grading. Right now he's doing a 2,000 feet long service, which is very interesting. So give him a look and see what you think. You might enjoy it. If you do, subscribe and watch his stuff. He's a fantastic guy. Now we are on to the brake shoes on this truck. And I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to reuse the brake shoes or get new. I need to replace the hardware. The hardware's in rough shape. It's a little thin and I'm afraid of it breaking. I'm afraid the hooks are going to break down here will be the problem. And I don't want this guy to have troubles. The problem with just replacing the hardware is there's one of the pins that goes across this shoe right here is broken, and it doesn't come in that hardware kit, so I may just have to buy new brake shoes. I guess I'll figure that out. Got the hubs cleaned up where the axles go, or we're working on it. I have to try and find those gaskets for that. If I can't find gaskets, we're using RTV. It'll be just fine. Before I go any farther, I'm just going to enjoy my cookie. Well, after running errands all morning, all our parts are here. I just decided to go ahead with new brake shoes, new hardware, new drums, and I got my U-bolts, some new gaskets for the axles, got some gear oil. That pipe's for another truck I'm working on. I just set that in here. Anyways, so we're ready now to set the axle back underneath the truck. So it's pretty cold, so I'm gonna have to open the door with the grate all and shove that up underneath there. But I had to get my brackets painted because I had forgot about them. My brackets are all painted, so now we can get moving setting this thing together. Alright, the axle's in and the U-bolts are tightened, so now I'm moving on to the brakes. I got the brake shoes on and all the hardware is in. I probably ought to back off the slack a little bit before I put the drum on, but right now we're going to put the hub on. I grease up where the seal is going to ride, and then I'll take some WD-40, PB Blaster or something, and put on the shaft here so that the bearings will ride real easy, or gear oil, whichever you like. Anything to make it slick, because it makes it better than the bearing getting kind of in there and getting cattywampus and getting stuck. Seems like it helps out. Alright, so I got grease on the seal as well, so that it will glide on easy. A little cattywampus in there. Before I get my seal to contact, come out here and put my bearing in. A lot of people like to oil those up, especially if you're gonna like go immediately back on the road, but we're not. We're this is gonna be sitting here for a long time, so whatever oil you may put on that bearing is probably just gonna run out anyways. So I just prefer to oil, fill the differential up and just check it several times. All right, once I get this nut started, I'll just keep. There's somebody here?
I don't know.
All right, torque sequence for this particular axle is torque it to 200. I'm gonna double check I set that at 200. Yes, I did. Torque it to 200. Once it's torqued to 200, basically you're making sure that the seal is seated. And back it off one full turn. Like so. I like to spin it. Then it says to torque it to 50. And torque it to 50 while you're spinning this. once you've torqued it to 50, back it off 1/4 turn. So we're going to go 45 or 90 degrees right to there. All right, now at that point, you put your magnetic base on here. All right, so I got it set up here, and this is nothing more than a magnetic base with a plunger, and a plunger goes in and out on the dial indicator and measures the difference, the amount that this moves compared to the stationary axle. So if we set it at 0, and then we tap on the back of the hub this way, and then tap that way, whatever reading we get past or before 0 is our play. And you know, you just take, I used to take a hammer and tap it this way until it stops, tap it this way till it stops, and take my reading. This spec is 1 to 5. After you've done this a few times, it's hard to believe you could feel 1 to 5, but you know, you get pretty close. So once I'm close, like I'll go on the higher side, like at 4 or maybe right at 5, because once I put the washer in and the outside nut, when I go to torque this outside nut, it's going to take any slop out of that thread, and it's going to make it tighter tolerance. And then I'll go ahead and bend my washers over. I don't reuse these washers if it ended up on this one, I wouldn't reuse that. I would replace it. You can see this one I need to flatten out. This goes in the keyway of the axle stub, and this locks the inside one. Most guys I run across don't do that. They just use this to lock the outside only, not the inside. So do whatever you like, whatever suits you. So I'm going to get this flattened out, get it torqued in, and I'll bring you back when I'm ready to torque. One thing worth noting is some of these lock rings that you'll get, these will be offset. Like they won't be evenly spaced from here to here, won't be the same as from here to this one over here. And they do that sometimes so that if you're close or nothing lines up, you can flip it and get a different tab. As you can see, there's a tab here that isn't here. I can't tell if it's ever been there. May or may not, I don't know, but sometimes you can just flip that over and it'll get you closer to one that you want to use. And what I'll do is I'll put it in, I'll bend the one over or two that I want to use. If I can get two, I'll do two, and I like to do one right above the spindle lock if I can, and then I'll come down around here and I'll run the nut in, the lock nut, the outside jam nut. I'll run that down snug, then I'll bend these over, and then I'll take it back off, make sure they didn't split up into here or anything like that, anything weird. Alright, so I got it in there, and I use this. This is nothing more than an old cheap pry bar that the hard plastic handle broke off of, and it works perfect for these tabs because you can get in here close, you can start to tap it over, and then you can pry in here to bend it the rest of the way. So now we'll take that lock nut back off, and then we'll inspect those tabs and make sure none of them snapped or broke or got a crack in them. And then once I'm happy with that, I'll put the nut back on. Put your light on here and you can see everything here. I bent this one, and you know, they're okay. So we're going to go ahead and put our jam nut on now. So I'll torque this down, and then we'll bend the outside tabs. I've never had one of these come apart. Tighten it snug. We'll get up to 250. this. A lot of times I can get in here sideways and get on this side over here. And I end up with this one right here on the jam nut. Alright, so now I'm going to finish cleaning this up. I'm just going to run a pick around all of these real good, and I got a gasket for it, so we're going to put a new gasket in here. This time I have my gasket in place. When our centering wedges go in, I'll get all these put on. This is what centers that axle in the hub. Customized this for getting something out the other day, and it was straight. It used to work perfect for doing these springs, but it's not so much anymore. Since I customized it, it doesn't work so well. It kind of screws things up a little bit.
Well, can you uncustomize it?
Yeah, probably can, but it'll
be weak.
Yeah. It was right there too. It was right there. Nothing like using a hammer twice the size of what I need, huh?
No, I could get you a smaller one.
Nah. I gotta get the roller in here. Just lift up this and set these springs up inside here. They go right in here, right there. Put that one in. Over here, take this one, do the same thing. Make sure those are pushed in. Let up on it. Now I need to bring the slack adjuster to where these are down in the valley, and that way it brings the shoes together and we can put the drum on. All right, we're moving right along, except for one problem. Wrong brake drums. These are for hub pilot. These are not the ones we need. We need ones for an 8 7/8 inside bore, which is a Gunite 3600A. So I got those coming. We'll either have them later today or tomorrow morning, either or. So I decided to move forward on a drive shaft, and what we need to go to the back of the drive, the differential, is we need a different joint. This is what's called a 1610 full round, and what we need is a 1550 outside snap ring. Now I have the correct yoke that would go into this, and we just have to cut it off and, you know, put it in, get it phased correctly, dial indicated, weld it, and then balance. The problem is we are probably, if time allows, we're changing this transmission. This transmission has trouble shifting, but if time allows, we're changing that. And if we're going to change that transmission, then that yoke needs changed. Well, if that yoke needs changed, I might as well just swap out the drive shafts for one that already has 1550s in it, because I have a complete drive shaft that uses 1550s. with a slip yoke, just like this one. So we may just have to do that. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm kind of at a standstill till we make. I'm either going to commit to doing the transmission next, or you know, we're just not going to do it right now and move on, because I don't want to spend the time and the effort to change out the rear yoke just to go and have to get another yoke for the front when I could use a 1550 drive shaft and, you know, only change no yokes at all. At that point, I just have to shorten one shaft more than likely, but let me look into that a little more. All right, so we got the right brake drums now. We got all the plumbing back in place. All the air lines are back to the chambers. The drive shaft is hanging back where it was. Like I said earlier, I've decided I'm just going to hold off on changing the drive shaft. I have everything I need to change it over. We don't need to cut any length out of it. It'll work just fine the way it is. All we have to do is just change out the rear. But I don't want to do that yet, because if we end up changing that transmission for sure, then it might be just easier to just go ahead and use the drive shaft that I have from my donor truck and have all 1550 joints front to rear. I'll just have to change where the cross members lay, and that's really not a big deal. We can deal with that. Next step is I want to get the back end of the truck down, get it down low, and then we're going to jack up the front, each wheel one at a time, and check the kingpins and tie rods, wheel bearings, all that. We're going to peel this apart. I'm going to take the hub off and see. I may have another hub that would go on this and give us bud wheels. Well, look at that. It's a little unnerving. They haven't been replaced, or if they're not threaded in all the way. I hate to see that. You see the difference here. Like maybe this one's not threaded in all the way, and neither is that one. They're barely holding. I don't know. Anyways, it'd be nicer to have bud wheels front and back. So let's get the back down and get the front up and get at it. I'm going to take these loose. As you can see a couple of these look like they're newer. I don't know if they're threaded in all the way. You know, there's not as much. There's a lot more threads sticking out here that maybe they need to be in there. I was afraid of. That's all that was holding that in there, was that little bit. Yep, exactly what we thought. Barely held in there. Yummer. I need a chisel in my hammer. That is stinky. Grade A stink right there, let me tell you. Whew. So, the kingpins look good, tie rods look good. Drag link looks okay. It's acceptable, we'll put it that way. So now we're going to go ahead and take this apart. There's been water in here. Everything's rusty. I expect to find bad bearings. But it is what it is. So we'll, this has a keyway just like the rear. And let's see, one's been over here, one's been over here. So I have to bend them back this nut off. Alright, you know that white big tray we use?
Mm-hmm.
It's over there.
Yeah.
You need it so I can set this in so it catches all the oil. I'm going to back off the brakes. Just take the slack adjuster, push in on here, hold in, and back them off. There we go. Now she's ready to come off and she's heavy. There ain't a lot of room, so the camera's got to go. Alright, so I don't know if the camera's picking it up. I tried to show this a little while ago, but there's huge pitting and materials coming off these bearings. So it needs bearings, and go to the hub. Inside the hub, you may be able to see this. Take the camera out of the way. But the race is the same. It's got huge pitting. Where it was sitting with water in here is what I believe. But the hub's the same. Or the race is the same all the way around. It's in bad shape. And I thought I was able to move that race before. I'm not sure. I'll have to recheck that. But regardless, I'm looking at another hub. I'm trying to find another axle or a hub that will give us stud pilot wheels. So we'll have to see if we can find it. Obviously there's a seal leaking, but the hold down pin is broken out of it. You can see this one's still here, but that one's gone. It was laying inside the brake shoes down in here. So good thing we took it apart. Alright, so we are going to push pause on the front axle for the time being because I'm looking for parts of this to change. If I can change the hub alone to go to the Bud wheels, that's what I'd like to do. However, this is an odd setup. It just didn't make sense from day one. A lot of this didn't make sense on this truck. And the other day I called Alan at the international dealer. We ran the VIN number and found out that what some things that make a little more sense. This truck was originally a 29,900 GVW. The rear axle was a 20,000, and the front axle was either a 10 or a 12. Now, judging by the bearings that we have and the size of the spindle, I can only assume this was a 12, but I'm just guessing. The problem is I can't find a hub to fit this spindle with Bud wheels. The number I came up with was an HF309K, but it's obsolete. And anything else I try and find seems to be the same. So this is the inner bearing, which this is a very common bearing. It's an HM212049, but the outer one is much larger than everything else I'm finding. Everything else I'm finding has a much smaller inner diameter. This one's a 28682, and I want to go from, you know, this setup, instead of having cast spoke wheels or Dayton wheels, whatever you like to call them, I want to go to Bud wheels. Well, I'm not finding them, and things didn't make sense because we got a 4-inch leaf spring on the front of this thing. Well, now that we know that GVW is 29.9 originally, and someone's had it derated to 25.5, things are making a lot more sense. But in the meantime, while I'm looking for this hub or another axle, I'm okay with getting another S-Series axle and swapping it out for, you know, as long as it's a 4-inch wide leaf spring and the center to center of the leaf springs themselves is the same off an S-Series, it should be just fine with air brakes, of course, and I could go to Bud wheels. So I'm going to continue to look for that, but I don't want to waste any more time on that because, you know, time is of the essence here. I mean, I can only work on this for so long before it really starts to hurt, you know, my project. So we're going to go ahead and move forward on the rear of it. There's been a lot of people wanting to update on this car, and it's in the same state as when I put it here. for a couple reasons. The main reason right now is, I'm working on trucks to help a friend of mine out. I got that one truck I'm working on to help that retired guy with his Chevy small block and the square body. And the reality is these guys need their stuff fixed far more than I need this car, and this car will just have to wait. I mean, whenever I get done with the square body Chevy and a friend of ours truck here, hopefully I can start working on this, but until then it's just gonna have to wait. That's just how it is.
What are you, a rapper scratching on the records?
I'll just stick with fixed trucks.
Yo, JC in the house.